It is widely known that the immigration process in America is long and complicated, though this does not stop many from trying to immigrate to the United States of America. There are a multitude of reasons as to why one would leave their native country, with safety, educational, and job opportunities being the main reason. Though entry to America is not always guaranteed, and if one eventually does make it, success is not always achieved either. Even with all these affirmed obstacles, the United States continues to be the main destination for immigrants, specifically Indians. I personally would not be living in the United States if my grandparents didn't begin their immigration process in the late 1960s. The immigration process in the United States is complex, and despite this, many people have and continue to immigrate to the United States of America. This is my grandmother, and she is one of the people I'm interviewing for my ethnography. In this interview, she explains the immigration process she faced along with her life in America. My grandfather, of course, had the same experience that my grandmother had, and he also offered his insight on the immigration process that they faced. My grandparents had 3 kids, an older daughter, a middle son, and a younger daughter. When my grandparents first came to America, they only brought their son, my dad. Their older daughter joined later, and they had their 3rd child in America. This is a newspaper clip from an Indian newspaper reporting on their immigration. Pictured is my grandfather, or Tata as I call him, on the left, with my grandmother, or Aji as I call her, on the right, and my dad in the middle. Now, to begin the immigrant process, you must first apply for an immigrant visa. They then waited for everything to be processed, and then received letters of approval, which took more than a year. They then had to obtain an Indian passport. They then had to travel to Madras to get the visa. Finally, they bought a plane ticket to America. Once they arrived in America, they then had to go to the immigration office to have everything checked. This process was just to obtain a green card, so they could live in the United States legally. In order to obtain citizenship, they had to live in the United States for at least 5 years. They then were eligible for citizenship, so they applied. Finally, they made it to the courthouse where they were sworn in as a citizen. This process is intense. Why? Well, according to Batra from Unsettling Immigration Laws, Settler Colonialism and the U.S. Immigration System, today, the U.S. settler colonial state continues to use national security justifications to fuel its racist and exclusionary policies. One of the things my grandmother was afraid of was whether they could get in or not due to a quota. My grandmother was right to worry, as from the article, The Effects of Immigration Restriction Laws on Immigrant Segregation in the Early 20th Century U.S., following the earlier Emergency Quota Act of 1921, the Immigration Act of 1924 marked the end of the open borders period. A quota system was established, and the number of newcomers could not exceed the quota for each sending country. This meant that there were only a certain number of Indians that were allowed into America at one time. My grandparents still decided to immigrate to the United States despite the long immigration process. They even decided to stay in America despite the hardships they had to face, including job opportunity or lack thereof. So what made them decide that they wanted to stay and build a life in America? The common theme I found was that they wanted a better life. A better life for their kids, where they would have more educational opportunity. Neither of them regret coming to America, but my grandmother does wish that she didn't have to work as hard as she did. My grandfather has a mechanical engineering degree, but it was never put to use as the lack of job opportunity was apparent. When they first moved here, they even had to stay with some family members that had already immigrated to America, as they did not have enough money themselves to own their own place. My grandmother wouldn't elaborate, but they did experience racism. To quote my grandmother, when working, people would just put you down, no matter what position they were in. My grandfather also explained that being laid off was probably one of the most difficult aspects. With all these obstacles trying to conform to American culture and lifestyle, they still put up with it just for the chance for a better life.